My sister is too close to that dogman. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I have a problem with my sister Amelia, who listens to your channel. She thinks that dogmen are her friends, thanks to your programming. And she's gotten too close with a creature that I suspect might actually be a demon from hell. I ask that you please read my email on your show in order to present a more balanced view of this subject. I don't know if there are actually nice dogmen or werewolves as your show seems to assert, but I do know that not all of them are to be trusted. I feel a deep sense of guilt about this because I'm the one who first told her about the dogman. I was listening to a few different channels on YouTube that talked about it, and I was very interested in the subject back then. We live in Wisconsin, and so that made it local and personal. She started listening also, but I found that she preferred your channel, with ladies talking about how nice dogmen are to them. I don't want to insult you or the people who send you their stories, but I'm not so sure that all of them are really true. Could wild animals actually be so friendly? I find it doubtful. And the other side of it that I hate to admit is that some dogmen seem to be supernatural or paranormal in some way. I would never have accepted that concept before, but because of the things I'm about to tell you, I feel that now I'm forced to at least consider the possibility of such things. People mean different stuff when they use woo-woo terms like paranormal and supernatural. But when I use terms like that in this email, I'm referring to events and creatures that I am sure have a natural and a logical explanation. It's just that it's an explanation that our species is not sufficiently evolved to understand just yet. Because there are parts of what I'm about to dive into that don't really fully make sense, even to me. So let's get started. My sister and her girlfriends have always been into the Ouija board, since they were in, I think, 2nd or 3rd grade. I know a lot of people have problems with Ouija boards. Well, get ready, because this story is the reason I now don't like the things. I do admit that when I was a kid, I was fascinated by the Ouija board. After all, nothing else that came in a box from Parker Brothers Games claimed that it could speak to the deceased. That's a pretty unique marketing position within the gaming industry, as my dad used to say. My mom used to have weekly Ouija board meetings with a group of her friends. Once a month it was at our house, and it seemed as though the events usually drew 8 to 10 women. There was a core group of, I guess, 5 regulars, and a cast of rotating extras, depending on the season. Some women only seemed to show up immediately after losing a relative or pet, to seek consolation from the other side. It was always a lot more interesting than my mother's monthly bridge meetings, which usually dissolved into an argument for whatever reason. I still don't even know what the rules of bridge are, but I heard all sorts of strange messages coming from that Ouija. There just wasn't as much entertainment going around for free back then, so there was no way I would miss listening in from the staircase when it was my mom's Ouija board night. It was condoned in our house, and so Amelia would do the Ouija thing with her friends, usually asking it questions about boys. So back during the pandemic, Amelia started to meet in the woods with her friends to do the Ouija because somehow they thought it would be healthier or some nonsense. But when they started to do it out there, she started to come home with stories of nature spirits talking to them and giving them advice about school and about boys. My mom was like, oh sure, that makes sense. But I was like, nature spirits? And I decided to tag along on her next Ouija board session. The girls made me sit on the grass at least 6 feet away from the 4 of them, as they sat on 2 rocks, looking ridiculous wearing surgeon's masks on a hot summer day in the woods. They soon started getting responses from something that claimed to be the spirit of the woods. I was sitting on the ground as they forced me to do, and from my vantage point, I could see what looked like an animal face peering out of the darkness at the girls. His face was directly over my sister's face from my vantage point. It was such a bright day, and the monster's face was in dark shadow, so I couldn't be certain that it wasn't pareidolia. I kept staring and squinting my eyes at it, trying to understand what I was seeing. But then there was a sound of a stick snapping, and for just a moment, the face appeared in much more direct sunlight. For 1 second or two, I saw a big monster face with tall, terrifying-looking monster teeth, and tall, pointed dog ears up on top of his massive cranium. I wasn't the only one who saw him, as the girl sitting directly across from my sister screamed and fell backward off the rock she had been sitting on. She and I started running away from there, soon joined by the other girls, all running back toward my family's house. When we reached our family's backyard, however, there was no sign of my sister Amelia. I told the girl who had seen what I saw to go inside and report all the details to my mother, and I tore off into the woods to find what happened to Amelia. When I found her, I didn't exactly run over to hug her. Instead, I ducked down behind some bushes and I watched, because she appeared to be communicating in some way with the creature thing whose face had caused us to run. This thing was even larger than I could have imagined, and it was literally down on its knees to try to get closer to my sister's size. It was making itself small, and the two of them were looking at each other in the way people do when having a conversation. The thing is, their lips weren't moving, and they weren't making any sound as far as I could hear. They appeared to be occasionally shifting positions slightly, but keeping their eye contact locked. They wouldn't look away from each other. It seemed as if the thing might be mesmerizing or hypnotizing my sister in some weird way. It did have the tall, pointed dog ears that one might expect to see on a dogman, but the face was taller and not as elongated as I might have thought it would be. I mean, this wasn't a Bigfoot. They don't have ears like a German Shepherd. It wasn't furry all over, but where it did have hair, it was long and straggly. It was a very muscular thing with so little body fat that at points I wondered if I were looking at exposed muscle with no skin at all over it. I wondered what my sister thought she was looking at, and how closely it did or didn't resemble what I was seeing. Maybe it was the way its ears were positioned, almost like horns on its head. But I thought this thing was a demon from the first second I saw it. If it wasn't, then it was a dogman who had seen his better days pass him by. This guy looked in bad shape. That's what I'm trying to say here. Eventually, the beastman sort of stood up suddenly, in this manner that looked very unnatural to me. I don't even know how to explain it. It was like his personal physics were different from the physics that the rest of us use. Of course it was dark, and I might have been imagining things in the night. Nothing about this seemed okay to me though. After the devil dogman sort of melted backward into the darkness, Amelia started walking back toward home, and I intercepted her, asking all sorts of questions. She told me that the two of them had just had a conversation, and I informed her that neither of them had opened their mouths, that neither of them had uttered one single word. She laughed and said that wasn't true. The two of them had just talked up a storm. She seemed to think they had a normal conversation, chatting in English. I saw with my own eyes that this was not the case, and I tried to explain that to her. Amelia seemed too blissed out to care what I was saying to her, though, and she kept laughing a lot, as though the things I was saying were funny. When we got back inside, our friends and my mother were there to greet Amelia with even more questions. She told them that she had a conversation with a dogman, same as she told me. I told them that I watched the entire thing, and she never said a word. She just stared into the creature's eyes. My mother said, "Oh, then it was a psychic conversation, as though that were the most normal and typical thing in the world." I had half a dozen red flags going off about various aspects of all of this, but whenever I tried to raise any of my concerns, my mother downplayed them and just wanted to hear Amelia's side of it. And according to Amelia, she had met a wonderful new friend. She now knew a dogman who was sweet and kind and loving. When I interrupted to say that he looked emaciated and sickly, my mother said, "Beauty is in the eye of the beholder." And then she sent me to the store to buy her some incense, just to remove me from the conversation. So I found out that Amelia had become a big fan of your channel, and I think that's why she thought the dogman was her friend. Or at least it helped her to get suckered in by this thing that I think is a demon. I don't think it's even a dogman at all, just something that can make itself look sort of like one. Amelia and my mother and I eventually got into a big shouting match about all of this. I challenged Amelia to ask the dogman what he was. Ask him to tell her if he was a demon or not. She agreed that she would go and ask him just that. Well, I followed her from behind where she couldn't see, and Amelia went back to those same rocks in the woods, and the beast came forth out of the woods just as before. It was something even more frightening to me that second time. There was no more debating or arguing about it. There was the creature. It was real, and it was horrible to see. When Amelia got back home, she admitted that the dogman had told her it was from hell. But she only did so in passing, as she went on to make what to her were more important points, like that the dogman didn't want to be from hell, and he didn't want to be a demon. Amelia was advising the demon to stop identifying as a demon, and to pick something nicer to identify as. I rolled my eyes and asked how she couldn't see that she was being mind-gamed and messed with. My mother told me to be quiet, and asked Amelia what else the wise dog-headed man told her. The two of them looked so unintelligent to me in that moment. The demon gave them a sob story about how he didn't want to be a demon, and it flattered their egos. People get stupid when you flatter their ego, it seems. Good thing I'm already too much of an egomaniac for anyone to even be able to puff it up any larger. When people compliment me, I correct them to make the compliments bigger. So when I looked at that Wolfman thing, I was seeing something a lot closer to what it really was than what my sister was seeing, or than my mother would even want to see. My mother hasn't seen your channel, but she's been wanting to get some sort of magical friend or familiar all her life. If she has to live through Amelia to get it, that's fine with her. So any warning signs that I pointed out that maybe making friends with a dog-headed beast man who admits he comes from hell itself might have negative repercussions were blocked out just the same as though they were actual facts trying to get into a publication like the New York Times. Nobody wanted to hear the truth. They only wanted their fantasy reinforced. I became very unpopular because I was so married to reality, and they found my presence annoying. Things degenerated from there, as Amelia brought her friends to the woods to be transfixed by this dogman. They each bring him offerings now, They each devote parts of their weeks performing services that he requests of them. More and more of their time is occupied doing things that seem to make no sense to anyone but the dogman. I understand why he asks them for food, but why does he ask them to spin in a circle 3 times before presenting him with the food? I think the point of the rituals he gives them is just to reinforce that he can get them to do any silly thing that he wants them to do. He doesn't really need any more reason than that. Just keep them used to following orders without thinking. They all tell me his sob stories, how hard his life is, how much he wants to be a good creature. None of them mention that he used to claim to be the innate spirit of the woods. After I said he was a demon, then he admitted he was from hell. They act like his story never changed. We know for a fact that he is a liar. We just don't really know for certain what any truth about him is. We can only guess about that, which is why my sister and her friends need to get away from him before it's too late. Instead, it seems to be the opposite that's happening. 2 of Amelia's friends have parents who are fine with all of this. Only one hides this information from her mother. I mean, think about that. We're talking about going on trips into the woods to talk with a straggly-haired thing that admits it comes up from hell to meet with those girls. Since this began, I've started to go to church on Sundays. My family thinks that's hysterically funny, but I don't want to lose my soul. I'm not even really sure what a soul is, but something deep down tells me I'm going to want mine intact on the inevitable day I meet my maker. I've got myself a job in town, and I made friends with a girl who lives near my job. Sometimes she even lets me stay over at her place. I don't want to admit it to her, but I'll tell you outright. I'm kind of afraid to go home to my family anymore. They seem to think all of this is me overreacting, but I kind of think they are missing the point. Heck, they're missing a whole handful of points. Last night I woke up with that feeling that I was being watched. I got up to go to the bathroom, and as I was walking out, from the darkest corner of my room behind the door, sprang the form of a hairy man-like beast with fur in spots, but mange in others. It leaped out of the opened window that I had shut and locked earlier. As it exited and ran off, it appeared to me to be much larger outside than it had when it was inside. In fact, there was no way that the huge dogman creature that I saw running off could have fit through the opening in my window that I saw it or something jump through. It did happen fast, and everybody I tell about this says it was a trick of light and shadow. But I woke up feeling watched, and then I saw a bipedal shadowy creature leap out of the corner of my room and through my window out into the yard behind my house. And then I saw that same dogman that my sister feels sorry for, and he was running away. I feel like the two were the same thing, but I do admit that it might be possible that those were 2 different creatures and that I put them together in my mind in the dark. But if that's the case, then where did the smaller one go after he jumped out of the window? Why didn't I see 2 of them running away? It really felt like that thing somehow unlocked my window, or maybe hypnotized my sister into unlocking it, then climbed in and sat in the dark in my room, watching me sleep. I mean, I was about to leave the room to go to the bathroom when it leaped out of the shadows. If it had just sat still, it could have either left after I was gone, or waited for me to come back so it could stare at me some more. Running just when it did makes me ask if it wanted me to see it. It's possible that it was just stupid though, I guess. It was one or the other. So I think you can understand why I feel unsafe in that house. Because I am unsafe in that house. I'm saving up my money now and I'm praying that I can find a roommate situation sooner rather than later. I'm 18, so I'm an adult. If I don't like it in that house, I can leave as soon as I can afford it. So that is what I'm trying to do. And I'm trying to do that because my sister is too close to that dog man. He's our newest channel member. You see, I'm talking about none other than Esteban P. Please join me in welcoming our newest channel member, Esteban P, who clicked that join link under each of our videos and now gets to see our weekly secret uncensored Dogman stories. Like yesterday's all-new classic, I Interrupted Its Dinner. Here to explain the various ways you can help the channel out and the cool perks you can receive in return is our international TV spokesmongrel, Henry Lee Dogman. Hank. Thanks, Biggie, and thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that when it cuts off after I think 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.